I'm Hannah.
I'm KG.
And I'm Natalie. Welcome to the Stride Sisters podcast. On today's episode, we continue to play through the Miles Madness 2025 bracket with our special guest, KG, from Living the KG Life. Last week, we played our wild card play-in rounds and finalized the matchups. This week, we play our first round and figure out which teams are going on to the Sweet 16. We hope you submitted your brackets and are playing along at home. So, lace up your shoes and step into the magic with us. This is weird. We don't do this in this order. Hello, everybody. For our little, update segment, I'm flying solo today. We have our check-in passes for Springtime Surprise, so check your Run Disney account if you haven't done so already, and continue to speculate and spiral about bib numbers. Runner tracking is live as well, so if you are interested in continuing to speculate and spiral a little bit, or you want to send to your friends, or just make sure you show up on the runner tracking the way I do sometimes, you're totally able to do that. The link will be in the show notes for it. And I can't believe that this is the last time that we're talking about that for this Run Disney season. Days until our next races and registration dates. So 2 days away from Springtime Surprise Weekend 2025. Hope you're packed, panic crafted out, and, are getting down for a little bit of fun in the sun. So continue to hydrate. I am going to remind you to download your PhotoPass pictures if you attended last year. We're at the dire point yet where they're going to delete themselves, but why add to the stress, Just get them done now. We have 156 days until Disneyland Halloween Half Marathon 2025. Your proof of time deadline is today, which is day of release. It is not a joke. Hannah is not here, but I'm going to say it for her. So make sure you've gotten in your proof of time, or that also goes for even if you're not going for proof of time. This is the last time you can update your estimated finish time. So say you've had a really good training and you think that you're going to run 15 minutes faster. This is the deadline for you to go in and update that. We have 205 days until Wine and Dine Half Marathon Weekend 2025. Our proof of time deadline is a month from now, and it's May the 1st. 281 days until Marathon Weekend 2026. Your shirt deadline is June 15th, and your proof of time deadline is July 1st. So keep that in mind. As I'm sure we'll get a lot of feedback about the shirts with the Brooks shirts and whatnot. So keep an eye on that shirt deadline and when you can continue to modify that. We have 303 days until Disneyland Half Marathon Weekend 2026. Club Run Disney registration is in 3 weeks on April 22nd of 2025. And general registration is on April 29th, 2025. So it's coming up. It's like they just announced it or something. No, it's coming up. And I think we should probably get themes in the next week or so. So that'll be exciting. And we have 331 days until Princess Half Marathon Weekend in 2026. Club Run Disney registration is the 17th of June, 2025. And general registration will be on June 24th. It's crazy. I don't know. We talk about this a lot with the dates and how it's like, wow, it's 300 something now. And it'll fly by. It'll fly by. And then we'll be in the twos. And then we'll be like 180 days ago. Then we'll hit the 100-day mark. And then it's just crazy how it helps let things, pass by, right? With, it's a little bittersweet going into your last race of the season. and, you won't see your friends again for a while, and you'll just have to keep in touch on socials, and it's a wonderful thing about social media in that way is that you can keep in touch so easily. Okay, on to some Disney news, and I thought we had, like, a showstopper in the one piece of news that we had. Obviously, I'm talking about Buzz Lightyear. And there being Buzz Lightyear related news. You know how many people I appreciate each and every one of you who sent that article to me about the updates coming to Buzz Lightyear in the Magic Kingdom, because you guys are my people. And that the wellness check needed to be done on Natalie. Worried about Buzz Lightyear. But it seems like they're upgrading the blasters on it. They're upgrading you get a new little like robot friend, and it's going to be more interactive and mirror the ones in Hong Kong and Shanghai a little bit more. And I think a lot of people who cannot find where their little where their little laser is are will rejoice in the fact that it's going to be different colors, so you and the person in the car next to you will have different colors of who's actually blasting the targets. Buzz Lightyear will temporarily close in August and reopen in 2026 for these modifications. I'm cautiously optimistic, okay? Cautiously optimistic. I mean, I'm sure it'll be great. um I hope that my good targets stay, but also, like, I don't know, that does also give me another challenge to accomplish if they start changing, like, which are the 100K targets or something or other. I don't know. We'll see. Something that's occurring a little bit closer to now. Um, Both of our shows in Hollywood studios that are being opened this year will open on May the 27th. So, Little Mermaid, a musical adventure, opens May 27th at Hollywood Studios. This is taking it's the refreshed, upgraded show from and that hasn't been open since COVID. So, very exciting. And then Disney Villains Unfairly Ever After will also debut that day. All right. I think I've buried the lead enough. Late last week, we finally got the information about the Brooks shoe collaboration and how that's all going to go down. Okay. So, probably one of the biggest things is that we're going to have the virtual queue is going to run let me take a step back. Probably one of the biggest pieces of news is the age old question of is the are the shoes going to be in the vendor building or the Run Disney merch building or the bib building, which I don't know why they'd be there, but they're going to be in the merchandise building. So obviously, selfishly as a Club Run Disney member, I'm like, woohoo! I do think it makes the most sense though, right? If people aren't interested in doing the shoe thing, um, but they still do want to get into the vendor building so they can go get their shirt that is included, that makes a lot more sense to have it kind of in like just separate all of us Looney Tunes who are going to be going bananas over shoes in a good way. So there's going to be a virtual queue opening at 8:30 a.m. and 2 p.m. You can only join the virtual queue one time per day. So they're just doing the second opening of it. We talked about how to join a virtual queue in our springtime surprise event guide episode. So if you want to go back and listen to that, but if you need a little bit of a refresher, but it's not, besides having a second drop of it, it's not going to operate much different than that. So there's going to be a Brooks running shoe trial area, and you're going to be able to try on like the Brooks models in like generic things. So I'm an adrenaline girly, so I would probably put on a pair of those because I haven't actually tried any of the 24s yet. So I'd be curious to see. I think they're on 24 now. Yes, they are. But I'd be curious to see how those even fit on my feet. Um, Trial's not mandatory, but it's definitely highly recommended. There's going to be some socks available, but BYO socks. Bring your own for a more comfortable and accurate fit. There will be forms distributed by Brooks Running Shoe trialing area to all the guests who want to buy them. On the form, you're going to have to give your desired style, size, width, quantity. They are going to limit quantities per person on the first day of the expo. So one of each design per adult purchaser. So if you've been worried about it, I'm not going to be able to buy up Minnie Mouse Brooks in every single size in Adrenalins. I don't even know if they're going to be in Adrenalins, but just as an example. So that's good. I'm glad that they're having a control on that for this. Please note that only credit and debit card payments are going to be accepted. Can't use cash, Disney gift card, magic bands. It's not like your normal like mobile checkout. Because merchandise mobile checkout's not going to be available for the Run Disney Brooks shoes. No discounts will be applicable for these because the mouse has got to eat. And returns and exchanges won't be processed during the first day of the expo and will be subject to availability starting on day 2. Interesting. And then I'm going through the Run Disney blog right now. Platinum and Gold Club Run Disney members don't need to join the virtual queue to access their early shopping windows. We got an email this past week. Our early shopping access basically is just going to start really early. Starting for Platinum members at 7 a.m. shoe try-on is available, and then 7:30 to 9:30 a.m. is the early shopping access. For Gold members, it's 7:30 a.m. is when shoe try-on is available, and 8 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. is our early shopping access. So nice early morning for us. And they say the parking lot opens at 6:30. So, whew. At the ESPN Wide World of Sports. There was a small like leak in what the shoes are going to look like. It looks like there's like a pair of Ghost Maxes that are Minnie Mouse themed. That picture has been floating around. I don't want to give the name of the person who posted because I think they realized quickly they weren't supposed to. And yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. I think that this was the right call to have it on a little bit smaller of a weekend. Just because just with like volume of participants, but it's gonna be exciting to see how this all goes. I've been a good noodle and I haven't bought shoes in a while, so here we are. Maybe I will like a hitchhiking ghost, something will be following me home. And then one last piece of Run Disney news. We got the themes for the virtual series for the summer. So very, very exciting. This is an anniversary for the virtual series. So, and we actually have already gotten to see a preview of the medals, and I'm sure they'll also be at the expo this week. And one of the 5Ks is Pirates of the Caribbean. One of them is Jungle Cruise. One of them is Big Thunder Mountain. And then the virtual challenge is Happily Ever After. Registration opens today. Good luck if you are registering for it. I think the medals are really beautiful. I honestly, especially as a compliment to the attractions themed one that I got 5 years ago during the pandemic, my first year doing Run Disney, this would be a nice compliment. I just morally cannot look at the box of medals that I am going to put on my medal hanger once I hang my medal hanger and then go, yes, I need a couple of more. So if you are registering though, it's really great for motivation. Keep yourself, especially in the hot summer months or in the spring, and just have something beautiful that you can wear around. The medals just are honestly beautiful. And I'm super excited to see people get them. Get a little bit of FOMO, but that's okay. And yeah, this is definitely interesting doing alone. I like having Hannah here better. Or KJ too, who will join us later in this episode. All right, we have a Disney fun fact. Today, April the 1st, in 1995, Blizzard Beach opens at Walt Disney World. So, if you are coming down for springtime and you are staying on property, you have access to a water park on your check-in day. Go check out Blizzard Beach. It'll be open. I believe they're doing some celebration this entire month before then Blizzard closes and Typhoon reopens. And another fun fact, that on April 1st of 2015, the bungalows at the Polynesian Village opened. I thought this was kind of interesting because it was almost a decade later that then they did the Island Tower expansion for Disney Vacation Club there. But I thought that the bungalows were a little older. what is time? That's really the commentary here. But happy 10 years to the Bungalows and the Run Disney virtual series. So now I think it's time for you to get a break from my voice and a couple others mixed in. So, without further ado, let's get into the first round of the bracket in the episode. We're going to roll into round 1 of our Purple Wall division. So, the very first matchup we got here is our number 1 seed of Wine and Dine Half Marathon Weekend 2026 to Marathon Weekend of 2027 versus our winner of the play-in round, back-to-back princesses. Discuss.
The silence of thinking.
I was going to say, I will also try not to be a broken record, but I have said from day one of Run Disney time that if I could only do one race weekend a year, it would be Princess. And then I decided to add on, and then things went crazy. But we're trying to get back to also fewer race weekends. So I would still do Princess purely for the theme, and Princess to Princess obviously gives you a lot more time to recover, to take a break, to start your training back up. Then training for Wine and Dine right into marathon training is literally no break. You are just full steam ahead. So I think I would go Princess to Princess, both for theme and training cycle reasons.
Yeah. For Wine and Dine to Marathon Weekend, if you're running Dopey or a challenge where you have to start your training much earlier, Wine and Dine kind of just like overlaps. So to me, you're not even like, I'm not even training for Wine and Dine. Wine and Dine just happens to
It's like
be a
part of your
catered
Dopey
training
training.
run.
Yeah. You get a medal.
Yeah, and I get a medal for training. Woo!
Yeah.
That's so tough. And I'm going to pull one of your rationale from earlier. If you do Wine and Dine and Marathon Weekend, you get a lot more like different medals.
Mhm.
And you get to go to a post-race party. And there's a festival where you get access to festival stuff without the crowds because it overlaps with because that stays open during the party.
Another thing against
Ooh.
Princess is that it does also tend to overlap with Massachusetts and New Hampshire February vacation.
Oh.
So travel prices are actually usually or can be expensive, either going there or going home. And it also sometimes has an increase in not capacity, but like in just like park goers because you have a lot of the New England folks coming down in one of those weekends too.
Also, if it's Mardi Gras and all of Louisiana is off of school, if that is
that coincides.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people there. So if peopling is not your thing, Princess may not be it.
Yeah.
True.
I think that was another contributing factor to why when I was there for Princess this year that I felt like I didn't get anything done was there's festival, there's all these people. Like I didn't normally when I go by myself, I don't buy myself a bunch of lightning lanes and things. I just sort of see what I can get on. Versus when I go with Ben, we're like all the lightning lanes, all the things. I think I'm gonna have to go with Wine and Dine to Marathon for that reason.
Oh man, I don't know if I like being the decider.
You just have to speak up earlier and then you don't
I was just going to say, you could jump in faster.
That's got to be quicker than that. Oh, this is so tough because you both make really good points. Because I think that the recovery is something that's understated or like underrated of, you know.
I felt really burnt out at the end of like Dopey after doing Wine and Dine Dopey and then having to train for Princess this year. Not that that's the scenario, but I felt really burnt out.
Yeah, I'm a little fried right now, to say the least. But because Wine and Dine, I mean, training schedule wise, I feel like this is like a complete easy win, easy dub, right? Because Wine and Dine, I mean, it's a catered training run of what your weekend looks like going into marathon weekend, where, you can be, like on your way training for something. And, it's just like you could just pick up marathon weekend and it's like, oh, I'm not really even behind. It's weird. But also, it is tough, especially, when I look at like what the PTO schedule looks like too, right? Where it's like, okay,
Mhm.
I'm gonna take this like week off in November, and then or like there are these couple days off in November, and then it's gonna be the holidays, and then it's gonna be the holidays again, and then it's gonna be I need actually some time off here too.
Mhm.
I tend to not take a lot of time off during the holidays because of marathon weekend, to be honest with you. I usually like kind of like save like goodwill days for
Nope.
or like those
I
days before.
refuse to work between like, whatever the Friday is before, like, Christmas Eve or what from then till New Year's. You will not see me. I am out of office. I don't care what else is going on in my life, you will not see me.
Oh, that's nice. I used to get disconnects with some prior jobs, and that was always really nice.
Another thing we haven't mentioned for, like, a negative since I picked Wine and Dine is you mentioned travel cost for Princess, but also depending on what races you choose for Wine and Dine and for Marathon Weekend, since Marathon Weekend has 4 races, if you do a challenge, the cost of those races could be a lot more.
And it's closer together, right? So those
Yes.
costs are coming closer together
Yes.
versus
Your
a whole
registration
year
windows are
apart.
gonna be right next to each other.
Yeah. And the merch and
Mhm.
park time, all of that.
Yeah, because when I did Wine and Dine this year, I basically told myself, like, "We're not getting anything." I got 1 Spirit jersey, I think that's all I bought while I was there. Maybe oh, and my shoe ornament because I always buy my shoe ornament, because I knew that I wanted to buy a ton of stuff at Marathon Weekend, which I did, but it was painful,
Yeah,
especially
I
when Natalie sent me my receipt.
true. Bean counter gonna bean count. I think I am gonna stick with wine and dine to marathon weekend. I think I am purely from the like schedule. I think the scheduling does kind of win out for me in terms of how that all just blends together. If you can kind of get that time away, because then also I feel like it also like the pro of having wine and dine even as a catered training run, it really invigorates you. It's a good gut check of how you, especially if you're doing dopey and say you're, and even if you're not doing dopey and you're not doing all the races at wine and dine of, I mean, that's just how it was this year of like, how do I feel at the end of this? And I now have like 2 more months of a marathon training block. Okay, I feel pretty good. Things are like going well. Like, do I want to run a marathon tomorrow? Absolutely not. But when you're at the end of the half, like kind of like your gut check of like this is how things are going at this point in time.
Mhm.
It's a good kind of check
It
in, and it's a fun way to do your 20.
definitely made me feel more confident. We got done with that, and I wasn't even sore at all, and I felt like I got a good time, and it was the most fun and the best I'd ever
Oh yeah.
felt. So, maybe have a little bias.
Oh yeah, we straight gooned for wine and dine.
See, and what's funny is I felt that way when I did wine and wine and dine marathon weekend princess in springtime. This year, doing princess before Boston, my half was so bad and I felt
Oh,
so awful
Oh
afterwards that I was in like a legit panic spiral about Boston after
no.
princess. And
oh
it took
no.
my long run last weekend to like chill out. So, it can also have the adverse
Mhm.
effect. If you
Yes.
have like if you have a bad race day,
Can mess with your head for sure.
yes.
Yeah.
My blisters were blistering.
Ugh.
It was
Yeah,
bad.
that's brutal.
Yeah. I had a lot
Yeah.
of PTSD to how terribly Chicago went while I was training for dopey, so each step that I made in a good direction made me feel a lot better.
Yeah.
All
All
right.
right, what's next?
All right, next is the one that KG doesn't want to talk about. So our 8 seed of marathon weekend to Disneyland half marathon weekend, so like the Dopey to Dumbo, versus our 9 seed of Disneyland Halloween to Wine and Dine in the same, really couple months span.
Y'all are crazy. The people that did Dopey to Dumbo or do the races that close together is like I'm so proud of all of you because that's insane.
That's just Natalie, I've never done that.
But like people listening, like the amount of people that I know that did that, like
It's a
going
lot.
across the country, the amount of miles, the amount of training, like, girl, no thank you.
Did Natalie tell you how she packed for that? 'Cause she didn't go
Yes.
home.
Yeah.
She just was gone that whole time.
Yeah, no. Like, that is absolutely not for me.
I think technically there's more time between Disneyland Half and Wine and Dine, so
Mhm. Or
you
Halloween to wine and dine.
yes, sorry, Disneyland Halloween to Wine and Dine, so
I feel like that would be my option in general,
mhm.
purely for that. Like,
'Cause you
I
got at
need a
least a month
break.
and a half, maybe 2 months
Yeah, I
versus, like,
need
a couple weeks.
break time. Mentally, financially, physically.
I still feel like it's like whiplash for me to try to be packing to go to springtime from Princess. And which is probably why I still need to get costume things together and have a plan um there. So I think with the dopey to Dumbo of it all, mine was Goofy to Dumbo. That I just had to be prepared for both of them because it was back to back weeks. There was no like there was no break in between.
Which is something
Um
else that we haven't talked about with if you don't live in one of those sunny places, traveling in the winter can also be really tricky. You could have a massive blizzard and get stuck going there,
Mhm.
coming home, missing your race weekend.
mhm.
Also very tricky. Because Natalie wasn't there a massive snowstorm for one of those?
Yeah, there
She got
was.
so lucky.
And I had already planned and talked about the idea of I'm not going to come back in
Yeah.
between them because I probably would have gotten stuck. And I pitched it to my bosses like honestly this is probably better continuity for work because I'm not going to have to like fly 2 days. I'm going to just stay in my same hotel room. I'm going to be able to work all day and whatever. And I remember I got a text message from him. He's like I'm glad you didn't come back. Like it's awful out here. Like there was like feet of snow when I was working remote those like that week and a half. Everybody was. Not just me. Everybody was because of how bad the snow was. That is tough, and especially if it's something where you're coast to coast is riding on it and getting out to Disneyland. That's a tough position to be in. I mean, on the flip side, with Halloween and Wine and Dine, if you're in the South, like you're still in hurricane season,
Yep.
so
Rogue
mm,
storm could mess it all up. Could close the airport. Doesn't happen too often, but on the upside, Disney is one of the safest places to be in Florida if it does happen.
I think where I'm gonna sit on this is I think I would take the Halloween to Wine and Dine because of the bigger gap in between them. I think that's where I would sit. That's where I would stand in terms of also just knowing you're playing less with your personal weather, like when you're training weather. I mean, it's hot and that part's a little miserable. Um, but in terms of like, you still have more daylight. Like when I sit and whine about winter running, the more and more I whine about it, it's like the biggest thing is it's the cold, but it's also the lack of daylight because then things don't warm up as quickly. So I think I would take the Halloween to wine and dine.
I'm also taking Halloween to Wine and Dine, so it's across the board unanimous.
A clean
Sweet.
sweep.
Woo woo.
Sweet.
I feel like all the points you guys made were awesome, and I want none of the marathon weekend to Disneyland. That's so close together. I don't want to. There's something about being in vacation mode on each of those, at least for some part of it. I don't want to like go and then either have like a week or two and then have to turn it all around and go to the other side of the country. I just nope, no thank you.
I do not know how I used to live the life I used to live with
I don't know
traveling
how you
every
did
single
it
week.
either. I don't know how I lived those 3 months where I was living on the West Coast, but flying back to the East Coast every 3 weeks, and you flew more than that, so
Yeah. There was one month where I was in my apartment like 2 or 3 days, which was a great use of my apartment. But like when I was in my travel life, I just I don't know how I guess I was a little bit younger, but I'm still like yeah. Anyway, moving into our next round matchup. We've got Marathon Weekend 2027 to Springtime 2027 versus Wine and Dine 26 to Disneyland Half Marathon Weekend in 2027.
I think I want marathon weekend to springtime surprise. I get a little bit, I mean, I guess you get a little bit of classic and a little bit of mystery with the other one, but I just feel like you get even more of that. I really love marathon weekend, and I get to experience the 10 miler, which is a fun way to like sort of cap off the series. And I feel like if I am, there's quite a lot of time to get ready for springtime, so I can still take a break before I reset. But I'll have done all this like base building and stuff, so hopefully like training for springtime won't feel like as big of a commitment. It'll feel more like fun and casual.
I'm gonna say something that probably people are not gonna like.
Oh, okay.
Oh no.
Let's hear it. It's like when someone sends you a message, it's like, "Can I be mean for a minute?" I'm like,
Yes,
"Yeah."
go.
Yes, that's what I'm about to do. This feels like the most boring 4 to picture. Like, or another way to say it, like, I I
I
don't
mean, there's a
maybe the
reason
4
they're
that I
both like
care the least
mid
about?
seeds.
You know what I mean? Like, marathon to springtime, I think would be fine. I think wine and dine to Disneyland would be fine.
I also just
So I
like
don't know.
that they're both on my coast, so I don't have to go to the California.
Yes, that's
I
always
that
a
flight's
win.
long. I don't yeah, I don't want to sit on it if I don't have to.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I would just go with whatever the 2 of you pick for this one.
Well, I don't know what's gonna happen because I think that mine might be the wine and dine to Disneyland because I was thinking in terms of burnout from training.
Yeah.
Being like, okay, you start in July, then you get to marathon weekend, and then you got to recover from marathon weekend in like, and this is my personal bias of being like, when that's when my deal with the weather gods is over and
Mm.
it's time to snow, ice, thunder, snow, dust storm, all of
Yeah.
these things that's happened in the last week here in Nebraska. And my deal is up. I've my bargaining is up. And then you have to like keep yourself enough in shape for the next, and I'm this is in a obviously in this situation I'm not doing princess. Um mm, Because, but the other side is if you do wine and dine to Disneyland, you pretty much start over with the training. If I did the math right, I mean, you would pick back up like kind of low,
Hmm.
which actually I don't necessarily think is a bad thing because it'd be kind of nice to go from I did a half and then like, oh yeah, I guess for a couple weeks, like I do like 5, 6, 7. Maybe I get up there, get back up there again. Maybe I don't. Um, but I and I know I'm a little bit biased because I am like a little squeak of a burnout going having trained or with the training from this year. Hmm.
I would say if I had to pick, I would pick marathon to springtime. If I had to pick, because I think the decrease going from, like you said, if you're doing dopey or the marathon, and then going down and quote unquote only hitting a 10 miler at the end or for the longest would be nice. And for New England, having a nice January vacation, and then April and January are like they don't know each other. They are two totally different people. So like it feels like also very different vacation, feels like very different like time of human life for me.
Hmm.
So I feel like if I had to pick, I would
I
say
think it's a nice
marathon
spread too,
springtime.
because I feel like I start to go a little crazy every
Few
3 or
months.
so months if I don't have a long weekend or a holiday or something. And
Yeah.
there's so few holidays at the very beginning of the year for whatever reason. And then once you get to summer, I feel like there's some kind of holiday or something every month. But that first few months is a long stretch.
Yeah. I think I still am gonna hit the 12, but if you guys make the 5 move on. Lots of good points though. Especially like I'm, up here April. I mean, I don't know. I live in the wild, wild Midwest so, in terms of weather. So there's that benefit of like springtime being like, with the weather of like, oh, like it's always nice and toasty down in for springtime and nice and humid. So for the running part, not so fun, but for the whole like
Not being in
I'm
the
out of
ice.
like yeah, not being in the ice or whatever Nebraska has for me this year. That is kind of nice. All right, moving on. Our 4 seed, Wine and Dine to Princess, and then versus our 13 seed of Disneyland Halloween to Springtime. So start the season, end the season. Thoughts?
I don't
Hmm.
want to pick Wine and Dine to Princess just because Princess is in it. And I think
It's
on the
okay if you do wanna pick it for that reason, though.
but that's definitely part of it, yeah. And I would say contrary to the last conversation we just had, I almost feel like Disneyland Halloween to Springtime is almost too long
It's
in
a long
between.
time.
That's a long time. So I feel like I would prefer a little bit of time, but not too much time.
Yeah, because you don't even get a coast to coast out of that because they're different calendar years.
Right. And again,
Hmm.
not a huge Halloween person. So I think even just theme wise, I would prefer Princess over Halloween because those would
Mhm.
be the two like consistent, right? Whereas Wine and Dine and Springtime both rotate or change.
Mhm.
Halloween obviously does a little bit too, and so do like the princesses themselves. But yeah, I think I'd go Wine and Dine and Princess.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that.
I don't even have any, like, real rationale because I also agree. My mostly was thinking about the timing. If you're I'll go ahead and put a pro out there for Disneyland Halloween to Springtime is that even though it is a long time in between, I do think that one would have, like, more variety if you're looking for a lot of different medals and such.
Totally.
Um,
And different experiences.
very different experiences.
Because I guess there's something we haven't really talked about yet with
For
in terms of similarity of courses
Mhm.
and
Because for
stuff.
some people, probably, like, to maximize, like, your bang for your buck, doing a course on the West Coast and one on the East Coast, that's gonna be the most, like, unique experience if you only ever did it once and you never had an opportunity to do it ever again. So I could see that. But I don't know that that would be the combo I would pick, where I need to pick one West Coast and one East Coast. That's not what we're doing today.
Some combination of it is somewhere in this bracket.
Yep. Alright, so we're all wine and dine to Princess.
All right.
Whiny princesses.
God.
Accurate.
Uh,
My mom calls me her princess. I had a CD player that said princess on it growing up, and I
Oh my god, I
was
love that.
definitely a whiny teen, so
I love it.
all right. Moving into the second part of our Purple Wall division.
oh my gosh, I thought we were moving on to cider. We're still in Purple Wall.
No, we're still in Purple Wall. We have Disneyland Halloween 2026, so to Marathon Weekend of 2027, up against Wine and Dine 2026 to Disneyland Halloween of 2027. It's got like 11-month gap there. Discuss.
Ooh, that's a really big gap for me.
It's
You
a
still
really
don't get
big
coast to
gap.
coast.
Yeah,
You
if
don't
you're
get coast to coast, and you're basically signing yourself up for 2 summer races. Kinda, like summer weather training. At least you get some kind of break for Disneyland Halloween to Marathon Weekend.
Well, it's like the same as Wine and Dine, though. It's that you're just training. You're Disneyland Halloween. I think that hits around when you're supposed to be around 11 to 13
Yeah.
miles anyway. So it's the
Mhm.
same thing as Wine and Dine. It's
Same
just
crux.
if you're training for the marathon, that is.
Hmm. It's tough though, because like food, the wine and dine experience is pretty great. And I haven't been to Disneyland Halloween, so I don't know. I don't know. And it's a wide variety if you do want the like one coast to another coast.
I would also argue that Disneyland Halloween to Marathon Weekend also then gives you two different holidays, usually.
Yeah.
So, right, so you
Yeah.
get Halloween in Disneyland
And
and then
Christmas.
Christmas, like the tail
Kinda.
end of Christmas for Marathon Weekend, which I would prefer to do. And even though we were just saying like the long break is too much.
This is basically 2 different, like, it's such a large gap that
Yeah, it
it's
feels
basically a once per year
yeah,
kind of vibe.
Mhm.
yeah,
Which helps with costs
It
a
does.
lot.
totally. And Halloween and Christmas time are both expensive times to go to
That's
either
true.
coast. But I think I would still go Disneyland Halloween to Marathon Weekend.
My bank account says I should care about how much stuff costs. My heart says I don't give a so
The typical fight.
I think I have to do Disney Halloween to Marathon Weekend. It's the 2 best holidays. And I've
Yeah.
never been to a party. So, like, an Oogie Boogie Bash, Mickey's Not So Scary, a Christmas party. I've never been to any of them. They never really, like, work out, but maybe I could make it work out.
And now you could also do Jollywood Nights. You could do a couple different
Yeah.
parties too.
The opportunities.
That was honestly something that went into my struggle for Wine and Dine for this upcoming year, because it just fits into, like, because it's a week earlier than normal, it fits into when there are parties without having to come too early.
Mhm.
So I struggled with that a little bit. I'm like,
And even
well.
if you don't go to the parties, right? Just like the vibe of
Oh yeah.
The
Christmas
parks.
time at Disney World is hands down my favorite time
Mhm.
to go.
My mom was so thrilled when she found out that the Christmas decorations were still going to be up for Marathon Weekend when they came
Yeah.
to cheer.
Yeah. I think that that's the way I would have gone to, even though the votes swept me. All right. Our next matchup. Lots of Disneyland Halloween chat right now. Disneyland Halloween 26 to Disneyland Half Marathon Weekend 27. So staying on your one coast, 2 races, versus Marathon Weekend 2027 to Disneyland Halloween of 2027. So coast to coast opportunity for this one.
Yeah, I would go Marathon Weekend to Disneyland Halloween. 1 for the coast to coast. 2, if I'm traveling and doing 6-hour flights, that's when I think the gap is helpful, right?
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
going legit coast to coast is a lot for travel and all of that. So I think I would do marathon to Disneyland Halloween instead of going to Disneyland twice in like less than 6 months. You know, I'd rather do one of each in the
Mhm.
year.
Yeah, that's fair. Ooh. This is tough because I'm like the closest to the West Coast of the 3 of us.
You
Yeah.
are. So
Midwest,
both of your
Midwest.
flights to either park are kind of long, right? Like
Yeah,
similar?
and there's only one direct on each
Oh,
that I've never taken.
Whereas I casually can just drive if I want.
True. This is kind of tough because I guess if I'm putting myself in the perspective of somebody who lives on the West Coast, I'm like banging the table right now, like, of course I want to do this, like without the 6-hour flight to Florida. Um, but I also think that in terms of when you differentiate your experiences, and I guess new this past year with Run Disney is that the 10K courses didn't change between weekends. It was a standardized 10K course for all 4 East Coast weekends. But that used to be a consideration of like, oh, like I think it was Wine and Dine and Princess shared, like they had the same 10K course, and then Marathon Weekend and Springtime had the same 10K course in terms of your differentiation with courses. Like you couldn't get much different with doing like the 5K at Marathon Weekend versus the 5K at Disneyland, where the 5Ks at Disneyland start next to the castle and end on Pixar Pier. Can't get much different, or can't get have a much more different experience than that. I think we make a convincing argument for Marathon to Disneyland Halloween.
I'm there with you. I've never had a coast to coast and I would like to get one someday. Even if I am still waiting for them to open up the race in Paris again so I can do coast to coast to Chateau.
yes. Yes.
All right. Got our 7 seed, which is Wine and Dine 2026 to Springtime in 2027 versus our 10 seed of Marathon Weekend 2027 to Wine and Dine 2027.
Ooh. See, that gives me odd feelings, the Marathon Weekend 2027 to Wine and Dine 2027, because it's Marathon weekend is kind of like the middle of the season of one season, or for a lot of people, maybe the epitome of their season,
Yeah.
depending on what you're doing. It can be a really important weekend for people. But then do just Wine and Dine. So like you do one season, you're basically in another season, but like that's the only one. So you do the first East Coast race and then nothing else the rest of the season. Which I'm
But
sure
in
plenty of people do that.
but in this case, that we're just talking about the calendar year or 365, so we're not necessarily saying that the rest of that season in 2028 you wouldn't do any other weekends, right?
I mean, that's
Yeah.
true. That's true. Hmm.
In our Delulu world, that
Yeah.
is. But yeah, I feel like the season split
Yeah, I think for
feels
me the
weird.
difference is like I like Marathon Weekend better than Springtime, and Springtime can get really hot.
Oh,
So at
I've
least I
literally
kind of get
thrown
a little
clothes
bit of
away
both. Yeah.
because it's so gross.
Yeah, so at least with Marathon Weekend and Wine and Dine, you get a little bit of cool or cooler because Florida can still hit you with a whammy in January, but you get a little bit of both instead of probably both hot with Wine and Dine and Springtime. So I think I felt so weird about it at the beginning, but now I feel like I'm leaning towards, yeah, I'm gonna go with Marathon Weekend to Wine and Dine.
I also feel like though Wine and Dine and Springtime both have very different vibes, right? Like Wine
Mm-hmm.
and Dine is like people are excited, the season is kicking back off, at least in Disney World.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people use the analogy of like it's like you're coming back to summer camp and like you're finally
Yeah.
seeing your friends again that you haven't seen probably in a
Mhm.
long time. And then Springtime has a different vibe because it's like the wrap of the season.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, see you in a few more months. Have a good summer. Like you're leaving school. So I
Yeah.
feel like those also have very different like friend vibes
Yeah.
to the
And Marathon
weekends.
Weekend and Wine and Dine together would be I mean, Marathon Weekend is super exciting
Yeah.
regardless. And then you only have to experience the excitement of seeing your friends again. You never have to say bye.
Yeah.
I'm so torn on this. I'm very, very, very much torn.
I would say maybe I would go wine and dine and springtime for the medal consideration we talked about earlier, where it would
Mhm.
still have like more options for themes, characters, etc. I think that's how I would push over into like deciding. Especially if in this Delulu world we know all the themes super early and we can make these long-term decisions, if there's a big gap.
True. I am the decider. Dang. I think both of these options come with like a big training gap,
Mm-hmm.
which can be both good and bad. I see it mostly as a positive, right? For Wine and Dine, you got like you got at least a month because I think it's toward the beginning. I always forget when the springtime training plan starts. I
I
think
think
usually
it's
it's
in like February.
I think it's like December-ish. It
Really?
starts in February for me because that's when I have no other training plan on my calendar. But
Wow.
I think because I know that like there's like what's on the Run Disney website, but that's not a challenge plan. But like Chris Twigs wrote up something. I don't know. Because I think it's about like an 18 weeker. So I was gonna say, well, let's be real. Then you're probably not starting again till after the holidays. Let's
Mm-hmm.
be real for
This
a
is how
second.
Ben and I ended up at our first springtime surprise with no training.
Yeah. Marathon weekend, you run the marathon, or you don't run a marathon. You have like the crappiest time of the year weather-wise to chill, and then but that also that's kind of a long time before then you would have to start running again for wine and dine.
Mhm.
Which can be a good thing if like then you get a lot of good cross training in, you do the things that you want to do, like the things that you can go skiing. I've never been skiing, and every year I'm like, next year's going to be the year I go skiing, and then I look at my race calendar and I go, I'm not skiing because I don't want to hurt myself. Right. If I have Princess, if I have marathon weekend, I don't want to hurt myself. Really, I don't want to hurt myself, period. But especially with those considerations of like, or ice skating. Like I like put myself in a little bit like the closer we get to December, the more I put myself in a little bubble of maybe I don't do that because I don't want to break a limb or I wouldn't want to break a foot before marathon weekend. You have the rest of your winter to enjoy things.
Mhm. Which is actually, like, if you're looking to go skiing, prime skiing is actually, like, post-December.
This is tough in terms of like because that big gap is, you know, or like if you're doing something like one of Kristen's programs, like Sculpt and Soar, like you have the time to really like build muscle and whatnot, and do like different types of exercise that you may have put off because it's like, oh well, yeah, of course I'll go for a bike ride when my mileage is lower, but like now, like I'm too tired to do anything but run and lift. So, oh god,
All right, so what do you think you're gonna go with, Natalie? What's your feeling?
shoot, um, gosh, this is so difficult
Okay, I'm
because
gonna do a countdown. Ready?
okay,
5,
okay,
4, 3, 2, 1, go.
Marathon to Wine and Dine.
There we go.
I was just watching an episode of Grey's Anatomy where Derek I mean, not that this is like a completely unique thing. It's like whatever you hope in the air that the coin lands on is um yeah, that's what you should go with, and that's what I kind of hoped the coin would land on. So yeah. Whew. All right. Our last of the Purple Wall division. We have Marathon Weekend to Princess Half Marathon Weekend, or Disneyland Halloween to Princess. So Princess is in both of them, KG. So
Thank God.
It's a bummer that you're not coast to coast eligible with the Disneyland one.
Yeah, not for this one. That was something I didn't think about when I seeded this is that the other division, we are pretty coast to coast eligible, but
Hmm.
like obviously I'm biased. I do marathon to Princess pretty often. And it's just vibes in terms of training. I don't know. Actually, usually am pretty good about training between marathon and Princess because I come home from marathon weekends so like amped up that I'm ready to rock and roll. This year a little less so, but um I think that that's pretty.
You would think that because this year I made a PR in both my marathon time and in my half marathon time in those 2 races, that I'd be all about that pairing, but I felt so burnt out after that whole period that I think I have to go Disneyland Halloween to Princess.
Ooh.
I think that's what's making my decision hard. Is when I did Dopey and I did all of the race weekends, I was so unbelievably burnt out. And I was sad because I love Princess so much. And I was like, I don't even really want to go.
That's how I was feeling leading up to it, as much as I love you, Natalie.
It
Oh,
was,
you know
it's
how I
rough.
was feeling about other things with that. So,
It's
yeah.
rough. But I do think doing Disneyland half to Princess and not being able to do coast to coast, if that's truly the only races you're going to do, is a bummer.
Mhm.
So I always love a good challenge medal.
Yeah, the burnout thing of everything. So, of course, I picked this year to do Chicago, where I have to start training earlier than I used to for marathons. Good times. That realization has been creeping over me the last like, couple weeks, but also like during this conversation.
And I
Um,
guess it would depend on what I was running in marathon weekend.
Mhm.
Because like if you were gonna do like a standalone 10K or standalone half and then do Princess, that's very different than
Yeah.
doing Dopey and then doing like all 3 races at Princess.
Probably would feel a lot less burnt out in that scenario.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that is a good consideration. Is that usually I most of my assumptions have gone off of I'm doing the long at least the half of the race, if not marathon weekend. It's like
Well,
I'm definitely doing the marathon.
if you don't have to worry about your registration, you can do whatever you want. I'm gonna sign up for a challenge.
Fair. I can't say I dislike that life. It's pretty nice.
I
Um
really wanna say Disneyland Halloween to Princess, but I think not being like, doing a coast to coast travel time and not being able to get a coast to coast medal, I think would push me
Mhm.
to marathon to Princess, which honestly sounds so silly that, like, well,
no, it's
I'm not gonna get an extra
completely
medal,
legit.
so I'm not gonna do it,
It's legit.
If you're gonna
Cuz
spend the
that's
money, you better get a medal that you want.
right?
all right. That concludes our purple wall division.
Round
So,
1.
Yeah.
yes, round 1.
So if you need a
Um
snack or some water or a break, you could pause it and do that.
yeah, go on right ahead. I'll recap what's moving on to our next round. So, in the next round, we'll have our one seed of Wine and Dine 2026 to Marathon of 27 up against Disneyland Halloween to Wine and Dine of 2026. Then we have Marathon, our 5 seed of Marathon Weekend 2027 to Springtime of 2027 up against the 4 seed of Wine and Dine 26 to Princess of 27. Then we have our 6 seed of Disneyland Halloween 26 to Marathon Weekend in 27 up against the 14 seed, upset the 3 seed of Marathon Weekend 2027 to Disneyland Halloween 2027. Then the last one of the Purple Wall division for this next round will be the 10 seed of Marathon Weekend 27 to Wine and Dine of 27 up against the 2 seed of Marathon Weekend 27 to Princess Half Marathon Weekend in 2027.
Woo.
Whoop, whoop.
That was a little corporate for me. Okay. Um
I'm sorry. Oh my gosh, I can't believe it. That was so exciting.
woo.
We are having fun, we promise.
Yes. Yes. On to the pineapple cider division. Part 1. This is the side where we start with the latter half of the season. So the second half of the season are our leaders, and then another race follows. So number 1 seed is Princess Half Marathon Weekend to marathon of 27 to Marathon Weekend in 28. Up against our back-to-back years of Disneyland Halloween.
Princess to marathon for me.
Princess to Marathon is very exciting because they're both like such exciting weekends. You still get the break in between. You won't get, well, I mean, you wouldn't get coast to coast anyways because it's the same in either scenario. So you don't have to worry about that. It spaces out the cost. I guess that also happens with back to back Disney, Halloween, but
And
you get
it's
more
2
variety because it's 2 different
yeah, the
weekends.
2 Halloweens for me would be a no.
Yeah, you're not you're not on the Halloween train like me.
So sorry for all the
Um
Halloween listeners, don't come for me.
you could just slide into my DMs. We can discuss it.
Yeah.
But I'm actually gonna crush everyone's heart because I think I'm also Princess to Marathon Weekend. I like the variety. I like the races. For me, unfortunately, it is much more convenient to go to the East Coast races than it is to go West Coast. And I would have to pay for 2 cross-country flights for Disneyland back to back years.
Another thing that
And
has
it's
not
hot.
come up yet that we haven't talked about is the Disneyland half. I would prefer the any Disney World half over the Disneyland half all day, every day.
The
If,
course
to
is,
Natalie's point, if we're
yeah.
thinking we're doing it at least or up to a half marathon, I did it. It was lovely, but, like, I don't want half of my race to be in the city. I wanna be in the parks, and we can do that with both halves in Disney World, and obviously we can't do that with land. So I think
Mhm.
that would also push me to Princess and Marathon Weekend. I love you, Anaheim, but I'm good.
Yeah, that's definitely a good point. Because then I guess I think I know where you stand on this, and I'm sure Hannah, you also stand in the same. Where if I'm going to go out to the West Coast, I'm going to get a coast to coast medal.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I'm going to do it. So, um, and even though I mean the 5K is amazing, the 10K is also super park heavy. But if
Yeah.
I'm going out and doing those, I'm doing the half as well. I'm not doing the half.
Yeah.
I love a half.
That's
It's a good
that's
distance. Some of
mine's
them
a
are too.
pretty easy. But oh, go ahead.
No, no.
I think that's another clean sweep.
It's a clean sweep.
Woo! I like the clean sweeps because they're faster than the other rounds.
Yeah.
We have a lot of decisions to make round one.
That's true. All right. Next up is our 8 seed versus our 9 seed. So our 8 seed is Springtime Surprise of 27, 2 Marathon Weekend in 28 versus Disneyland Half Marathon Weekend in 27 to Princess Half Marathon in 27.
I would say Disneyland to Princess because we can get it coast to coast.
Mm-hmm.
That 3 week gap though
Is
that
gonna
we talked
suck.
about. Oh, it's good.
But if it's gonna suck, but
We
you
get
can
a
get
medal
it out of
for
the
it.
way, you get a medal for it. You can like you might burn out, but then maybe you never have to feel like you need to do it again, and you're just like,
Yeah.
Narrator says that I still feel like I need to do it again. I guess that's not how I got my coast to coast though. I got it at Disneyland.
yeah.
Yeah. And then
Oh, and wouldn't it be so special though to get your coast to coast at Princess? KG, you love Princess.
I do love Princess.
And that's where you got your coast to coast.
Yes. It just took me a second.
Is that the combo you did?
Yeah. I did Disneyland
Okay.
and then Princess.
The historian over here is like nodding, like, yep, that is what you did.
Honestly, the amount of times that I don't remember things and Natalie or Amanda are like, that's what you did. I'm
It's
like,
okay.
thank you
Natalie
so
does
much.
that for me too.
Or like I'll ask the two of them, like, did I run that course? Have I ever done that? And they're like, yes, of course you have. I'm like, thanks so much. But yeah, I would definitely say Disneyland to Princess for all of those reasons. And springtime to marathon weekend is again back to like a long stretch between the two. April 27 to January 28.
Mm-hmm. I think I like the idea of Disneyland to Princess because whenever I do have to knock out the coast to coast, I would like to knock it out as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
Careful, they're going to put it back to back weeks again.
Okay, not that fast.
Yeah.
We'll see. I mean, I guess that could happen with our theoretical 2027. We don't know what'll happen then, but ooh, that does make the vacation very tough though if they do that.
Yeah.
I was just saying at the beginning how that's ugh. I don't care.
Do it for coast to coast.
Do it for the plot. I actually might have voted for springtime to marathon because actually I've done both of these combos. So, well, yeah, because springtime to marathon is how I did my first dopey, and
Mm.
because I couldn't go to wine and dine that year. Although I guess at the end of that springtime, I was like, I don't understand how people do dopey. Then I registered for dopey like 2 weeks later. So
Very relatable.
yeah, a meltdown in the Ratatouille bathrooms later. Um, yeah, it wasn't a meltdown. I was just like sitting there like I don't understand how this happens. And so it's actually because I remember and that was when springtime was a little bit earlier. It was how it is this year where it's beginning of April, not mid-April because of the Easter of it all. And I felt like I truly had like well, by the time registration was about mid-April. So I had a good 2.5 months to like kind of figure
Recoup.
out what training. Yeah, recoup or not just recoup, but also kind of get like my stuff together in terms of like, okay, so you just signed up for this big thing. Big thing here. Okay. Get it together and then figure it out. So kind of I had like enough time to kind of try some more things. That's when I really started interval running. I hadn't really even tested out intervals much. It was just a walk when I'm tired. And that was when I started structured interval training. So I had that good amount of time to like really build up. I think that going from like a 3-day challenge to then kind of this is what I need to do to get my life together. I'm a little bit biased with that. But also kind of the Disneyland to Princess. I mean, but last year I had 5 weeks in between. So Disneyland to Princess is where it's just going to be. Just wanted to give a little, I guess, a little ration, a little nostalgia, I guess, for the springtime to marathon. But then I also did Princess after that, so it wasn't exactly in this parameter. Anyway, next combo. We got springtime in 27 to wine and dine at 27. So you close an East Coast season, you open another one on the East Coast. And then up against the 12th seed of Princess in 27 to Disneyland in 28. Have we found the toast in the snack box to some people? Um
I think I'm gonna go springtime to wine and dine
Ooh.
because I actually like that the like gap of like not really having too much like yes, you have to train near Christmas time for springtime, maybe, but it's like very light level. You're still just, dipping your toe into the training pool. And then I can take like some of the summer off and then do wine and dine and then be like clear for the holidays again, like no commitments.
Mhm.
Plus, like, not that I don't like drink that much or anything, but that means like there's nothing interfering with celebrations, holiday celebrations in any capacity.
I think I agree. As much as I love Princess,
Oh my goodness.
I know. Stop the presses. She's not picking Princess for one. But again, I think Princess 27, so February 27 to January 28.
Hmm.
That's almost like an entire year,
And no
right?
coast to coast.
And no coast to coast. And you're still training through like not fun times of the year for both.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? So it's not like you're kind of getting to your point like some decent weather depending where you are, at least for Boston. Training for marathon weekend and training for Princess, I'm still going to be training in the winter, which is going to be a lot of treadmill.
Hmm. All right. Do you
I'm
have an
curious how
opinion,
many times I
Natalie?
have contradicted myself
So many, I'm sure.
throughout this
yeah.
podcast. I'm trying to
Look,
think of it as like purely in comparison to the other options.
Oh yeah.
yeah.
Is how I'm going to justify how much I'm contradicting myself.
But I think it's not black and white though, right? Like I think that
Yeah,
it is conditional where for some things like oh like that training like yeah it's gonna like be in the winter and that'll stink but whatever versus signing up for 2 winters of it is worse, right? Or you have to train winter of 26 for Princess and then you got to go into it in 27 and sometimes
right.
like my chats with the powers that be of the with the weather they don't go so well. So like sometimes you get lucky and sometimes you don't with your winters. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think that it's not black and white, but I think I would go for the springtime to wine and dine as well. So that clean sweep.
It is.
Yeah.
Woo.
Wow, we're really getting on the same wavelength here.
Woo. All right. Gonna go with our 4 seed, which is Princess Half Marathon in 2027 to Springtime Surprise in 2027. So you got that like 5 to 7 week gap depending on when springtime is. Up against the 13 seed of Disneyland Half Marathon Weekend in 27 to Wine and Dine in 2027.
We do have a coast to coast option here.
Mhm.
That we do.
Princess has that same positive though of KG, you love Princess, and slowly like tapering down. How long is it between Princess and Springtime? Like a month and a half
Yeah, it kind of
ish?
depends
Usually,
on where they sit, where it's usually about 5 to 7 weeks.
yeah, especially because like
Mm,
this year I'm doing Princess and Wine and Dine. I mean, just kidding. Princess and Springtime. because I signed up for them, didn't end up doing Marathon Weekend or Wine and Dine. And I was like, you know what? I'm okay. And I'll be happy with doing Princess in Springtime.
I'm so sad I won't be there for springtime with y'all.
Same. Pull a Natalie and just find a bib and show up.
It the overlap with the thing that with the
Yeah.
thing
We
is
got some schedule conflicts.
yeah.
I think I'm gonna go I think I'm gonna go Princess to Springtime because that's what I'm doing this year. So I feel like that feels biased, even though I would love a coast to coast medal.
Especially this one's so pretty this year. But this is in the future. We don't know the medals.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, I think Princess to Springtime. Just the taper down is really nice of the mileage where although I can't say that like it's like, oh, I still got another double digit one to do tomorrow. When you go to bed the night before springtime. But this was like my first post COVID Run Disney season was Princess to Springtime. So I guess that's a
So
little
nice.
slight bias there of that one. It was only 5 weeks apart. That was kind of wild because that was like some lore, I guess. And with Maz and I, it was like kind of our first times where we were taking like fully like those like multiple trips like, like 5 weeks apart for trips. It was like, oh, what's this? Like, what is this feeling for us?
Everyone at the office was very much confused when I had Marathon Weekend and then Princess, not that that's this one, but like just the time between it when I came back with another set of medals, they're like, "Oh." And
What's
I actually
happening?
yeah, and I had a few people last week at the office, right? It's been weeks since Princess ask me, "So when are you running that race?" "Oh yeah, I already did that." They're like, "Oh."
Yeah, comes quick, man. All right. Part 2 of our pineapple cider division.
Hannah,
All
do you
right,
want to go
we
turn a
got
light on?
Fine. I don't mind
You
sitting in the
don't have
dark.
to. I was there. I feel you're like sitting in the pitch black.
I have my iPad to light my face.
gonna be
And then I feel like
there's
Natalie, you're like the complete opposite, where it's like very dark. We have like bright sunlight, like a beautiful spotlight.
yes, and then it will go away, and then I'll be sitting in the darkness.
I feel like that happened the last couple times we've done
Yeah, it
recordings. You're
definitely has.
usually in the pitch dark.
Yeah, it happens. Still adjusting. All right, for our part 2 of the pineapple cider division, our first matchup, our 6th seed versus our 11th seed. We got Disneyland Half Marathon Weekend 2027 to Disneyland Halloween Half Marathon Weekend 2027. So you are staying on the same coast. Hurrah if you are a West Coaster.
We really should have brought someone from the West Coast to our panel.
Yeah. Yeah, but then we needed 2 more people because we
Odd
needed
number.
someone to tie break. And then we have the 11th seed of Princess Half Marathon Weekend 2027 to Wine and Dine of 2027.
Princess to Wine and Dine. I don't even like we've gone through so many of these. I feel like I'm going to be repeating myself for my logic and such, but it's similar like timing to the last one where I kind of like get to train up. This one does overlap a lot more with like the holidays and such, but you know, I just think I like this combo better and I don't have to fly to the West Coast.
I would agree.
Plus, in terms of variety of courses, the Wine and Dine half course is very different from the Princess Half Marathon course versus at Disneyland.
I found that out the hard way.
Oh, yeah. At Disneyland, they did change between Disneyland for the half marathon weekend this year versus the other version where you go near the Angels Stadium or into the Angels Stadium, but your max, your 5K and 10K there are pretty much the same, and then your max deviations aren't so big there. So I think I'd also go the Princess to Wine and Dine.
Look at us, we're so efficient.
All right. Next matchup. 3 seed Disneyland half marathon weekend 2027 to springtime of 2027. up against Springtime of 27 to Princess in 28.
I think I'd go the coast to coast route for this one
Interesting.
because fair enough gap between January 27 and April 27.
Hmm.
You get a coast to coast without having to do two halves.
That's true.
True.
Save yourself a couple miles. So I wouldn't hate that. And still in the same season.
Hmm.
Where I feel like if,
Less training weeks.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think that would be my pick for this one. See, look at that. A couple options with no princess. Look at me go.
What
Growing.
growth?
Growing.
Now we're back to it being tough.
Oh, is that a sweep? Or are you
I
still
think
thinking?
so. No, yeah.
Okay.
Disneyland. Yeah, it's a sweep.
Yeah. Sweet. All right. Yeah. The 7 and 10s are rough. Um, so we have our 7 seed is Princess Half Marathon Weekend 2027 to Disneyland Halloween of 2027. Up against Springtime Surprise in 2027 to Disneyland Half Marathon Weekend of 2028.
Oh, see, I feel like that one's easier because I would get princess and a coast to coast. In my like KG preferences. So I think I would go. Even though I don't love Halloween, every once in a while.
I can oogie boogie with the best of them.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Love a good Mickey pumpkin, you know?
True.
I have a gigantic Mickey, the
The
like
inflatable one.
Mickey. No, well, maybe not that gigantic. There was a at Costco this past year. There was
Oh,
the one that changes the
yes.
light colors. It's way bigger than I thought it was. Um, and we live in an apartment, so we just like put it on our kitchen table.
Love it.
Took up like half the table.
I didn't see the Easter things at Costco today.
You did or didn't?
No, I didn't.
You'll look
Maybe I
you look
didn't look that
again, and if they
closely.
don't
I'll
show
look
up, I
again.
can send you one.
Sounds good. Thanks. I was just like, wait a minute. I also don't know if I looked that hard because it was a Saturday at Costco, but
I'm also gonna go Princess to Disneyland Halloween because I like Halloween and I like Princess and it's a coast to coast.
also I know that we're not considering this year's themes, but imagine getting like a half marathon medal with Aurora on it and then also Maleficent, but then your half marathon at Disneyland is also Maleficent.
Yeah.
Because you can't consider themes because you won't know the medals like that far out, like to make this type of decision. But that's why I banned that.
Mhm.
Um, but also like that's like kind of that is the temptation with Disneyland Halloween. I actually think that that's a pretty good. I think I would probably do that one
I
as
think they
well.
should put Oogie Boogie on a medal for the Halloween race and then add a Oogie Boogie party to the race weekend, and then that would be like great weekend.
True. All right, our last matchup of this division
And this round.
and the round.
Woo!
Woo. We have Springtime Surprise of 2027 to Disneyland Halloween Half Marathon in 2027 versus the 15 seed of Disneyland 2027, so the January race, to Marathon Weekend in 2028.
So
Is that the biggest
basically a year
gap?
apart.
E-
Other than the same weekends, yeah, I think so.
Yeah, that's got to be the biggest gap, especially if you consider if they ever bring it back to MLK weekend the way that it was for the first Disneyland back. That is a 51-week gap.
I think springtime to Halloween would be my least favorite, but I think it would be my pick.
Because coast to coast.
Yeah.
I did not anticipate coast to coast being such a trump card.
Yeah, neither did I. But now that I think about it, like, of course, if I'm going to go out there, I want to get a coast to coast.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder for like anybody who is a West Coast listener if they're like screaming at us right now. Like, of course, like it's a consideration. They have more options. We don't.
Yeah, but maybe I don't know because I don't live on the West Coast, but maybe the perspective is like, oh, it's easy for me to get the whatever one I want from West Coast. I'm gonna go to the East Coast anyways. So like for them, maybe the coast to coast is almost like a guarantee. Maybe it might means not as much.
That's also that is a consideration. Well,
I don't know.
there's
I'm sure
also
everyone's shouting at me like, absolutely not.
Kristen's gonna make you do an extra burpee now. Um, I think there is a consideration of like the West Coast to East Coast, East Coast to West Coast of how like your wake ups and stuff go
Yeah.
and how it's like easier or harder. Like versus I was like a spring chicken at 2:30 in the morning, even after having just done
Yeah.
marathon weekend the week before because that was my 5:30. That was my right. Like I didn't struggle quite as much with it because it was like, oh, like I'm gonna wake up for my 8:30 a.m. meetings, a 6:30 a.m. meeting there, but it's fine because I'm used to that time, right? So versus coming from the West Coast east,
Hmm.
that really messes your sleep schedule up a little bit. Trying to get to sleep at the right time and then wake up at the right time, I think that is a consideration of the jump forward in time.
Yeah.
I'm gonna pick springtime to Halloween.
Same.
Cool.
Sweet.
And that's the end of round one, people.
Woo-hoo. I guess we kind of started talking about this a little bit, but what surprised you guys with kind of making your picks in that?
Well, obviously the coast to coast trump card.
Yeah.
I would
And
say I didn't really think about the distance or like the length of time in between races. Like I feel like I don't that's not always top of mind for me. But that was a pretty big factor for me in these.
Interesting. So would you say I guess because it's pros and cons in different ways, where if it's too short, it's like, hey, settle down. But
Yeah,
if it's too long, it's like, okay, like,
I'm bored.
yeah, right? Like, I can only sit and stew in my FOMO for so long.
Yeah.
Interesting. What is a pick that you made that, well, maybe would need to review those first, but just like go back over. Like, I was going to say something that surprised you, or like maybe like a specific one that you didn't think you might.
for KG, it's anything that didn't have princess in it.
100%.
If Princess was up and it wasn't picked, it was like, what's going on?
100%. Especially if springtime or wine and dine were in the other options. Not that I don't like those. I just definitely don't like them nearly as much as Princess. Which I know is a hot take because a lot of people don't like Princess.
I feel like I was surprised by the longer we thought about them, the less I cared about like how my vacation schedule was going to impact my choices. I think in my Delulu math, I was like,
It'll be
this
fine.
it's fine. It doesn't matter. Maybe I've finally earned another week of vacation. I'm not that far off, guys. I'm eligible for another week of vacation, I think next year. But I don't know if I get it in January or if I have to wait till like the January after my anniversary. We'll find out.
Stay tuned.
If you want to find out about my vacation schedule.
Doing some quick math here. That should be a sticker or something. But just to see like how many, I guess kind of counting as like the lead of the weekends, like which race you start with, like which we have of each different category, because that's just some interesting math for me. So hold please as I math in front
Yeah,
of people. Like I hear,
have we had any preference towards a certain weekend?
yeah, that's what I'm trying to do the math for. So Something that's interesting stats-wise from the first round, and this is counting the, like, leader of the round, not necessarily uh, the full combo of the round,
The
because I wanted
accompaniment.
to yes, the second, the coast to coast earner, of it all, although I actually am interested enough to do that. So counting the leader of the round, going into round or the second round, the Sweet 16, we have 2 that start with Wine and Dine, where Wine and Dines are first, 2 that start with Disneyland Halloween, 4 that start with Marathon Weekend, 4 that start with Princess, 2 that start with Disneyland Halloween, and 2 that start with Princess. Or sorry, Springtime, 2 that start with Springtime Surprise. So now I feel like that math is not nearly as interesting as I thought it was going to be. I thought it was a little more stratified, so now I need to do the other half. To see what our highest instance of things are. Picks are like our second race
Mhm.
is. So we have Marathon Weekend appears 3 times. Wine and Dine appears 4 times.
Wow.
Springtime Surprise appears 3 times. Princess 3. Disneyland Halloween 3. But 0 for Disneyland as the second race. Which
Interesting.
actually makes some sense because with the coast to coast ending up a bigger consideration than we anticipated, I think that makes sense because
There's
there's
only
only
one
one.
scenario where that would get a coast to coast.
Yes. And we decided that Dopey to Dumbo is crazy and I don't know why people do that. I don't know why people do that. I know why people do Goofy to Dumbo though. Kidding. Um but yeah, it's interesting but it also kind of makes sense to me. Well, I think that's an episode. Thanks to KG for joining us, and she will join us the next 2 weeks to continue to go through that bracket. If you enjoyed listening to our show, please leave us a review and a 5-star rating. We love reading your reviews out loud, and you might even be featured on a future podcast episode. We have a community spotlight on our Instagram at Stride Sisters Podcast. If you want to be featured for a Medal Monday, Finish Line Friday, or any accomplishment you want to celebrate, send us a picture via our social media platforms or our email. And to continue the fun, join us on our Facebook page. All the ways to connect with us can be found in the show notes. Thanks for listening. Until our next adventure, we're wishing you endless miles of magic and memories. See you next time.